Welcome to the Appalachian Creative Podcast, coming to you from the Mountain Craft Film Festival in a lovely conference room provided by the Hilton Garden Inn. Let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to the Appalachian Creative Podcast. I am Jacob Holmes, here with my co-host Jerry Buckner. We are in for a treat today, so we're just going to get right into it. We are with Chris White, an accomplished filmmaker out of...
I reside in Greenville, South Carolina.
South Carolina.
And I've told people that South Carolina is very similar to West Virginia because we are both states that most people just kind of pass through going somewhere else and don't take enough time to stop and like, hey, South Carolina is great. Y'all should stop here sometime.
Yeah.
I guess sometimes people may stop in Myrtle Beach or Charleston.
Yeah.
But where I live, I'm more in the foothills.
Right. You're on the western part of the state, right?
Yeah. That's right.
So do us a favor, just tell us a little bit about your background, kind of who you are, and we'll get right into it.
So I am a independent producer. I work with my wife, Emily. We produce movies. I am a screenwriter and director. That's my favorite job on set. Awesome. I have experience. I think like all of us that are in the independent space, like I've done video production and editing, shooting, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know, about 10, 12 years ago, I just zeroed in on the writing and directing. And I was trained in the theater as an actor. Okay. Did a lot of improv, comedy kind of stuff.
What's your favorite thing to write, direct, and work on?
It's what I'm doing now. Like my next movie is going to be a screwball musical comedy. Okay. And so I tell filmmakers all the time, whether they ask me a question or not, if I just see one, I'll say that. I literally do tell people that you should only make movies. You should make the movie only you can make. Yeah. And so the movie only I can make is something that's funny and has some musical element in it.
That's awesome. That's interesting.
Does the music come from theater by chance?
I'm not a musician. I'm just an appreciator of
music.
That's
just what you like.
But it's kind of like my therapy. I think that's the way I
Gotcha.
process. If I'm feeling very happy or very stressed, it's usually put on a record or listen to music.
Right.
So that's important to me. But I do find that while I write, this has always been true of me. When I write, I'm usually listening to music. Okay. There's something about that gets my brain going.
Yeah.
So
being able to just hear the depth, to hear each of those notes and how it all comes together, it's nice. It's very interesting the way that you utilize music in your storytelling. You know, being able to blend not just good comedy, but with good music. But that takes a lot of intentionality, especially in your storytelling.
Sure.
How are you able to stay intentional in comedy while focusing on storytelling? Because comedy, in my opinion, is difficult to write. It's probably the most difficult genre to write. So, how do you manage that?
Well, I think really good comedies are still at their heart. There's a story being told, and so we start from the same place. Even if you'd write a heavy drama, there's some structure to the storytelling. There's some characters. So you put that in. I think comedy goes to a place where things are a little twisted or heightened, in an amusing way. Right. So it could even be, Mel Brooks took Nazis and made a comedy.
Yeah.
And the producers. So you can take horrible things and twist them in such a way that. But I also think right now I feel like we need comedy.
It's important right now, as our culture is constantly evolving. And it kind of brings me to something I wanted to ask you. So, how do you strike balance between being funny while showing respect to, like in this one, the religious story? There are aspects in the story that you have to pay respect to in a broader community. So, how do you manage that?
So, Electric Jesus is about Christian teenagers in a rock band in the 80s. And it's not what you'd call a faith-based movie. It's faith adjacent. I mean, it's about Christian kids,
right?
And evangelical youth group culture and Christian rock music.
Do they have big hair?
Oh yeah,
They have to.
They were rock stars back then. So they had to.
It's not an '80s movie without big hair bands.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the Christian rock stars that had big hair. Everybody had big hair. But with that, Jerry, what I love those characters. Mm-hmm. With no sense of irony, with no sense of it's just completely honestly, I love those characters because they are me and my friends. Right. Even when they behave badly or behave in ways that I wouldn't agree with, like if you talk to 54-year-old Chris, like, man, that scene with Eric and he kind of, Sarah, boy, he's rough to her. You think that's okay? It's like, no, I don't think that's okay. Like,
making a movie.
It's a scene in a movie and the kid's acting like a jerk. And I mean, I was a jerk when I was a kid, and you were probably a jerk when you were a kid. There are moments when we've all been jerks, and we only see it in retrospect. So, I'm glad you realized that Eric's being a bad guy there, because he is.
That's the point.
That's how he's acting well. Then he's doing his job at the highest that he can do it.
But the way you, I have fun with Christian subculture. I'm not making fun of Christian subculture. I myself am a Christian. I believe in all that stuff. Maybe not in the same way I did when I was a kid, but I love Jesus. Mm-hmm. But, also Jesus likes to laugh. And
Our pastor's very funny whenever he's delivering his message. There's a lot of humor in communication, period. And
but here's the deal. Like, I'm not, when you come to see my movie, my objective is not to persuade you to believe something, or I'm just trying to tell a story and share it with you.
Yeah. Right.
So a lot of more what we would think of as faith-based movies, they have an agenda. They want you
more
to
of a persuasive piece.
They're like,
as opposed to an entertainment.
Well, the
piece.
third act is the call to the aisle.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And if you grew up Baptist like I did, you know that altar call at the end, like, no, what are you gonna do with God?
It's coming.
Right.
You can anticipate it at the end of the service. I get that.
But what's funny is, like, I see movies that aren't Christian at all that are just polemics for another point of view.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And they feel heavy-handed to me. Yeah. So anytime I feel a little manipulated or feel like you want me to respond a certain way, I don't like it.
I'd agree with that.
That starts feeling like it's not art. So
it's like sales. You don't like being sold to.
Right. But I like to be sold by a great salesperson who really is serving me and like, oh man, I do need to buy those shoes. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate you taking the time to ask the right questions to make sure that I got the right product and the right this and that and the other. But rooting the characters, in something beyond just a comedic archetype, giving them a real struggle and a human element. Mm-hmm. I could see how that would help to alleviate some of those societal concerns with, he's mocking me or this or that.
It doesn't mean so. I've had people that have seen the movie and they were offended by certain things in it, and it's like, sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, but I can't. The director's number one job is to keep tone. That's the number one job of a director in a movie. Hold the tone. I want everything in this movie, every performance, every piece of dialogue, every set piece, costume, I want it all to fit in the same movie. Mm-hmm. That's my job number one. And sometimes the things that are going to fit in the world of Electric Jesus might offend a religious person. They might offend a non-religious person. Right. But I'm holding this tone, which is a very tricky thing to do, and it's still the thing that makes me happy when I see the movie. Is I'm like, man, this is the only movie. I'm the only person in the world that could have made that movie, because it's just this fine thing right down the middle that gets it just the way I want it to be.
And Electric Jesus isn't your only movie. I looked at your filmography.
Yeah, sure.
You have a pretty deep list.
Electric Jesus was the first film that Emily and I produced that really had the budget it needed to do what it needed to do. We've been really scrappy, crowdfunded, a little bit of investor money, but not huge budget movies. Just practicing our craft and learning our craft for 10, 15 years.
Right.
Electric Jesus was the first thing where, where the film is being produced on a level that, that you're going to see a movie like this on.
Sure. a higher level.
Yeah, it's a movie you could see in the movie theater. Now, we had COVID when it came out, so we weren't in movie theaters, but we're going to be in a movie theater today.
Yeah.
Which is going to be super awesome.
It's going to be really fun. I'm excited for that.
We are too, yeah.
So, I had a good one I was going to ask you. What were you saying? I'm so sorry.
I said...
so you mentioned how this was the first real film where you had an opportunity to blend your experiences, everything that you've learned with a budget. And
still not a huge budget. This is like...
But at least one that could afford you a confidence in production or pre-production to help you cast and bring in some, great talent. How was it different trying to manage star power, versus in this project versus maybe some of your other projects?
Well, okay, so two, I would say stars. Certainly, they're stars to me. Judd Nelson is in Electric Jesus.
Yep.
Was one of my heroes as a kid. Loved The Breakfast Club. Loved every Judd Nelson thing. And then Brian Baumgartner, who plays Kevin on The Office. Yeah. He's awesome in the movie. And
they're not making an appearance, are they? To the film, the Mountain Craft Film Festival.
He's so busy playing golf and writing books.
I'll be on the lookout for him.
Shooting cameos for people. How's it different? I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting. I mean, we just shot this short film music video with Fred Armisen. This is fresh, and we're showing that. We're going to show "Come and Save Me," and this is fresh to me because it was about a year ago we shot the music video with Fred. But it took me a second. Like, I love Fred Armisen.
He's so funny. Fan. He's one of my, from a filmmaking standpoint, he's so talented.
Yeah. So when he walked on set, and the way it happened, he came in late. He had wardrobe at his hotel. He's walking on the set to first shoot, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Fred Armisen. And I'm getting a little nervous, and he just comes up. He had sunglasses on, and he flipped them up, and he goes, "Hey, this is what I look like." It's like, yes, it is. You look exactly like you. He goes, right? And he's like, all right. He goes to the makeup chair. And but then, so maybe there's a little bit, especially if you're really if you're a big fan, I think, maybe there's a second where you have to process, okay.
Some of those emotions of, oh my gosh.
This is cool. Judd Nelson is in my office and we're talking about this character I wrote. And then pretty soon that just goes away. And it's just like, it's the thrill of the work.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of my favorite things about working on movies, not just with actors, but with technicians and crew people. Like, people who are the best at their job are so inspiring.
Yeah,
for sure.
The coordinated efforts.
No, like you said, you had some big name talent in Electric Jesus. I'm curious. There's two things you can do to get secure funding, right? As an independent, is you can get a big name attached to the film, or get someone with a lot of social media following. That's what I was always told. So
okay, yeah.
How did for one, it's a two-part question. One, how did you get people like Brian and Judd, and then how did that impact the success, if it impacted, of the film, and any investors or anything like that?
It's almost like that old Steve Martin joke, like, here's how you get $1 million. First, you get $1 million. Next, that's like casting, I think. Let me see. I would say this first to indie filmmakers. Remind you, I want you to make the movie only you can make. Sure. And that script needs to be as good as you can possibly make it. And you need to be able to be fluent in your movie, be able to talk about it. And that takes time. Sometimes it takes longer than writing the screenplay to figure out just how do I explain this to people, how I talk about it in an exciting, compelling way. You got to get that down first before you do anything. Then you need to secure the services of a casting director. Unless you are close personal friends with the actor, like you text them and talk to them, they're your bud. Even in that situation, it can be awkward to say, hey, will you be in my movie? But you need a casting director, because what they do is they make everything official and proper.
They bring that network that people they've already worked with.
And a good casting director is not going to reach out to an actor. I mean, attachments are weird. I mean, just because somebody's attached, I don't want to ruin this surprise for would-be film investors. Just because I say George Clooney is attached to my movie doesn't mean he's going to be in it.
Right.
Because eventually we'll raise the money, we'll set a shooting date, and suddenly Clooney's not available again.
You shoot Ocean's 17.
Right. It's more once you've shot the movie where talent attachments help, or once you're going to set with the movie, that can help with some of the financing issues, because the actors really they're really like pre-sales and stuff like that. But even a pre-sale deal is contingent upon that actor. So if you say we have Danny Trejo and then you don't, your pre-sale deal is done.
Right.
That didn't happen. So casting's tricky. Getting attachments is tricky. But the key is just a casting director who can make an overture to the agent and just say, or tell you like, oh, they prefer to work with their manager than their agent. Or, in Brian Baumgartner's case, his agent was just very great, businesslike, enthusiastic. Yes, we're all excited. His manager was just a bulldog.
Yeah.
And I remember one time telling him, I was like, man, your agent's so great, but that manager of yours, he's the worst, Brian. Like, he's the worst. And he just started laughing. He goes, I know, that's why he's so great for me. Because he said, I've had several agents over the years, but I've only had this one manager. And this guy got hired. He basically told me he could get me an audition for The Office that was just starting.
Right.
And Brian was just in LA. And he said, if you give me an audition, you'll be my manager. And he did. And this manager that he has was tough on us. Like just every little thing, and he's West Coast time, we're East Coast time. So
Right.
Emily would get a text at 2 a.m.
Explain the difference between the two of those for people that may not know. What does a manager do? What does an agent do?
Well, that's one of these elusive things that probably an actor can. An agent's going to be more just nuts and bolts. This is the contract. This is the offer. These are the dates.
Yeah.
Just they're very much. They're almost like you're an attorney. Sometimes they are attorneys. A manager is more like the conversation you have about your career.
Okay.
What do you want to do next? Let's don't do this. Let's do this.
Big
it's more
stuff.
nuanced in crafting an actor's career or a director or a writer's career. So I think most actors I know everybody wants to have representation. Everybody wants an agent, but everybody really wants a manager.
Yeah.
Who's just saying, okay, this is how I see you, or
You're doing this really well.
Mm-hmm.
You should pursue this or go that way.
And it's stuff like, you know what, a lot of, you should be blonde instead of brunette.
Yeah.
Or you look better or we're going to put you up for bad guys instead of good guys, just things like that.
I heard a story about a lady who she knew a musician and he was fantastic, but he had this long, like balding hair, scraggly hair, just no good, just not. But man, he kept talking about how he's going to make it, he's going to do it, and she just didn't see it. Well, a few years go by, he gets the right manager and the right publicist, and it was Kenny Chesney.
Oh, jeez.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, like, talk about the right people, the right time. Like, the guy just didn't have the look. You know what I mean?
Tim Allen famously was hit or miss as a comedian, and somebody told him, you need to wear a suit when you do stand-up. And this is the 70s, late 70s, 80s, when people weren't really wearing suits.
Right.
They did back in Bob Newhart, the 60s and everything. He said, you need to wear a suit. And as soon as he put on the suit and tie, he just started getting bookings. And he grew into Tim Allen.
See,
it was just something about...
That's a crazy thought. Like someone
But you have to be willing to take that advice.
Someone looked at him in a time, like you said, where suits weren't as prevalent as they are nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to classes in college where kids wore suits to
But would you watch a
Oh,
stand-up comedian wear a suit?
And someone...
Who does that? Jerry
I'll watch
Seinfeld does
Steve
that.
Harvey?
I'll
Steve
watch.
Harvey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's crazy to think that like that was something that like set that manager apart or that
And
agent
it
apart.
could have
was
just
like,
been that Tim's set was just getting really good and he was on the verge anyway.
And
that
maybe
little-
putting the
one of
suit
those
on gave
just-
him a little confidence and he
Yeah.
puffed his chest a little bit.
It does.
and
If you wear a suit
you stand taller,
And-
the shoes make you.
and suddenly your wife
up.
says, wow, you look great. It's like, I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, that suit, you look sharp. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to your sister's wedding.
Sure. For sure. And so, and it's nice whenever you can put people like that in your corner. And some of that is luck and preparation. And
Oh, yeah. Let me just say, it is luck. It is luck and timing.
Yeah.
And all producers, people who are listening have produced a movie at any level, this. Like, we've got these dates. Everybody's ready to go. The locations are set. The crew's ready to go. But if we just moved it 2 months later, we could get this actor.
Sure.
And you have to say, I'm going to take my whole army and put them on pause and reassemble the troops in 2 months so we can get this. You have to balance.
And may not get those people back. And
exactly. Then you have another set of problems. So movies are so, one of the things that's so magical to me about movies that, that anybody makes a good one is just a miracle.
Yeah.
A total miracle.
It's so hard to make a bad one.
Yeah. It's so much work to make a terrible movie. But it's also like just the timing, getting the timing right. And, I talk to filmmakers and I got to have this actor in the movie. And I'm like, well, who's going to be your guy if he's not available?
Yeah.
No, I got to have him.
It's not how it works.
You need a list 10 deep.
You mentioned, always invest in a good casting director. What would be, after having the big sets and stuff like that, what are we'll say top 3 positions that you like?
Oh man,
you have to invest in these positions, because I think a lot of people, you always need a DP, you always need like a gaffer and stuff like that. But like casting director is one of those. They're not generally thought of in that top list,
And somebody who'll, I like to shop with actors. Like I like to, once we get the lead set in, I like to see a lot of people, and sometimes I'm waiting for the actors to show me what the character is. I because my background is in acting, I just like that. I love that question. What are the most important hires when you're going to set? And let's put casting director to the side. Certainly, crafts that are the opposite of your strengths. So I'm a really good
crafts. I thought you were going to say craft service.
I'm like, yes.
I was like, wow, that is not what I was expecting.
Well, it can make the difference. Catering is very important. But so I'm a field general. I'm a leader. I'm a rah-rah team guy. I can command a set. I got that. I also am a writer who likes working with actors, likes fine-tuning the script. I've got that. Visually, and I know the tone of my movie, so I can get the tone of my movie, and I know enough about. I started as a kid taking still pictures, so I have some ideas for compositions, and I know where the camera goes. My next movie is going to be this screwball comedy, and for instance, I know I'm not going to shoot anything real close. I'm going to shoot like medium long. A lot of the old screwballs took place in compositional frames like that.
Right.
They would say room for the comedy. So I'll have those ideas. After that, so, for me, I love having a great costume wardrobe person, a designer who's really into it and is having fun with it and is resourceful. And I love having those conversations. Similarly, like set and art direction. Just again, I'm directing the movie. I don't have time to put as much thought into that I want to, but having a great person who's resourceful and can turn like the room we're in into somebody's bedroom or a jail cell in like 2 seconds. Right. You're like, wow, man, you did that thing.
Let me go cut some wood real quick. I'll be back in an hour.
Yeah, and it's magic. It's so cool when they do that. But for me, I'm going to say first assistant director. That's my closest collaborator on set. That's a person that can't get too into the art, but has to respect the art. And they have to have at least as much leadership, field general swagger that I do, just to match me. Because if I start getting out there and saying, wait, grab that camera, put it over here,
and you got 30 minutes left in this,
and I need somebody. And on the Come and Save Me, the short with Fred Armisen, I had my dream first AD, John Rouleau. I'm coming for you next movie. You're my guy, and he was great, and he was happy and tall, like physically kind of imposing, and never yelled. And I remember we were doing some shot in that, and I was getting frustrated because it was taking too long, or we didn't have the right prop or something. I don't know. I was being me, annoyed. And I was like, this is ridiculous, man. We had time. we talked about this, John. And he did this thing where he took his hand and he put it on my shoulder. wasn't patronizing. He just laid it on my shoulder like this. And I could feel all my anxiety leave my body through his hand. I wasn't afraid he was going to beat me up. I didn't feel like he was, okay, little man, calm down. He just went, boom. And he goes, yeah, I know. And he's like, so what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I guess we're just going to shoot the scene. And he's like, yeah. Okay. All right, let's do another one. It's like, anyway, I just loved him. All my crew loved him. And
I took a master class once from Dallas Jenkins, who I'm sure you
I know
of
that
and all
is.
that.
Yeah.
If you don't know, he's the director of The Chosen, which is currently a huge
that's a fantastic
TV show.
Faith-based TV
Yes.
show. It's fantastic. It's like Jesus, but it's Friday Night Lights.
But
It's
so good.
I took
the
a
cinematography.
Yeah, it is beautiful. The set design is also
Yeah.
great. Costume, all that. But in the master class, it was about directing. It wasn't about faith. It wasn't about anything like that. And he said his number one tip that I took away from that was when he gets frustrated, like you're talking about, he doesn't take it out on the actors, on the PAs. He gets his gaffer, his DP, his AD, his leads into another room, and he just lays into them. And their job is to know that like this isn't personal. I'm letting out frustration. They go back out and they have a great shoot. I think is that's a good way to surround yourself with people that you can trust to have that dynamic.
And you are going to get frustrated, and it's still, I mean, at the end of the day, you're getting to make a movie.
Right.
It's like, to me, that's the best job in the world. So no matter how annoying or frustrating it gets, it's still, wow, we get to do this. It's just amazing to me. So I do think, but you also have to vent. You have to have trusted people. My editor, Scott Lansing, he's my editor, but he's always on set with me. One, because
it's good to have someone from post on set.
Yeah, because I can just say, like,
is this doable?
If we covered this enough,
yeah.
and he might say, give me an insert of the hand reaching for that, and I think we'll be good. So it's just fun to have, but it's also because like he's like my brother. He's like the guy that if I'm upset or struggling, we'll just hang out. You know, I'll do lunch with Scott
after a stressful day. Go out and have
you trust him to be able to dump on and.
Or we'll just talk about college football or something and then move on. So he's a really trusted friend and great creative collaborator. So.
USC or Auburn or South Carolina or Auburn.
South Carolina? Are you kidding me? I'm a huge Gamecock fan.
I have a cousin that goes to Auburn.
Oh, really?
That's why I put those two together.
Well, we shot Electric Jesus near Auburn. We shot it in Columbus, Georgia. It's very close to Auburn. A lot of Auburn fans. I think I prefer Auburn and the Alabama-Auburn.
Oh, yeah.
Rivalry.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So costume, first AD. You mentioned
anything
set.
art related is important to have some good trusted people, but that first AD and then and I just take Scott for granted now. I have a great editor. And if you've heard this before, films are written on paper, the screenplay, they're written while you're filming it with the actors, and they're written a third time in the edit.
Yeah.
And
that's where the movie becomes a movie.
Yeah, and it's never going to be like, my first assembly of anything I've ever made has always been frustrating to me. It's like, that's the movie?
I saw that.
That's boring. Who wants to watch this? But just the work of post and editing and sharpening and, hey, why don't we move this scene over here is just, it's
pulling people into the story.
Yeah.
I just finished... we actually just released and premiered my first feature-length film, and
congratulations! Wow,
thank you. And I didn't have the money to hire an editor, so I ended up watching my movie 70 times.
Oh yeah.
Oh my! And I think I've told Jerry before. I will hire an editor for now. I got so burnt out. I miss stupid stuff just because. Yeah. You watch something 70 times and your brain almost fills in the gap. So you may not see a jump cut or something like that. And
totally. And me and Scott, I remember we saw Electric Jesus played in Columbus, Georgia on this huge IMAX screen at the Infantry Museum.
That's super cool.
It was so cool. It was huge. The biggest we'd seen it. And we saw several mistakes in the movie because it's so big.
But nobody else saw them.
Yeah, it would be like an extra flash the camera with their eyes or something. It's kind of like, did you see that little girl? She looked right down the barrel. I'm like, how did we miss that? He's like, because we were editing on a 32-inch screen.
You're filming it on a screen that's this big. Yeah. And your director's monitor's this big.
And now we're looking at it on the side of a building. So that was kind of cool.
That's interesting. and
value the editor.
Yeah.
Well, and it seems like, and this is probably a call to your strengths. You mentioned a costumer as like the first person, and I think that plays into some of the things that you've mentioned in that you write strong characters, and that you write characters that you believe in, and then the first person you're going to consider is somebody who's going to help bring that person to life also with you, and so it's interesting that you place so much value on that. And I think that plays into comedy. You have to get comedy right. Like, it's hard to get right.
And I've always been fascinated with, what does comedy look like on the day? What does it look like on the set?
It's so
when
situational.
It's happening?
As somebody who tells a lot of the jokes the same, over and over and over again in different areas, you can see how it hits different in different crowds, and you change a word, and the delivery's different, and all that. And even in my personality, I've got a lot of influence from my favorite comedians. And so I was curious what comedic voices or styles maybe influenced your work.
Well, right out of the box, I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina in the 70s and 80s. So Southern kid, Andy Griffith, right?
Yeah.
As soon as I found out he did stand-up and heard what it was football and all that stuff. His fractured Shakespeare, where he tells like Hamlet's story, but it's in his country way. No Time for Sergeant's favorite movie. That Jerry Lewis, huge, like all the Nutty Professor, all that.
He was
stuff.
so goofy.
I know. And then all the typical stuff like Three Stooges, and then as I was kind of getting smarter and being a teenager, and really getting into cinema and actually seeing movies as being made, things you make and is written, and people put them together. The thing that made me want to make movies was when Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom came out, and I got a making of magazine. It was just like all the behind the scenes of,
that's cool.
of that.
Yeah. And that's a great set design movie too.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in my parents' car, we were going somewhere on vacation, I'm just looking through it. And it just occurred to me that there's somebody that takes an old leather jacket and makes it get all beat up. Mm-hmm. And then they have like 30 for different situations, and I'm like, how cool would that job be?
Yeah.
Hey, Mom and Dad, I know what I want to do. So that's when it became something I wanted to do. And then my comedy goes to Saturday Night Live, watching Saturday Night Live growing up. I really loved Woody Allen movies. I remember Purple Roads of Cairo is one of the first movies I saw where I just saw a big, serious idea being explored in a kind of sweetly comical and kind of sad way. And I had so many, and it's so creative. That's the one where Jeff Daniels is an actor in an old movie, and he comes off the screen and romances Mia Farrow. And so he's a fictional character, but they got to get him back on the screen because they can't turn off the movie until he's back. It was just a great little simple comedic setup, and it was such a beautifully shot and rich movie. And I was like, man, you can really talk about big ideas in movies and it still be funny.
Right.
So, those, I would say those, but all the comedians, Steve Martin, all the Chevy
Super
Chase
talented,
movies and all that growing up.
Fletch was probably one of my favorite movies
Totally.
as a kid. Just seeing somebody so goofy and be able to change characters on the fly so fast. It's just genius. When I was a teenager, I saw the movie Hot Rod. I love, it's my favorite movie.
I always forget about that one, but that one's really funny.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
And I love it so much because it seems like a movie that me and my buddies could get together and shoot. And that just is inspiring to me. And
totally.
It's so funny. Like, they just hammer home all that. And it comes from, they wrote really good stories. They wrote really good characters. But it took more than that just to come together.
Sure.
But,
I talked to somebody one time that works on Adam Sandler movies, and they said they have multiple cameras and they never call cut.
Yeah, and
I'm sure the editor loves that.
The assistant editor on.
And it's hard for me to watch a comedy without thinking. It was so hard for them to have to deal with that, for them to sit there with a straight face.
Oh yeah.
Like, how many times did it take for them to get that?
Yeah.
Especially when you watch, those ensemble comedies when you have so much talent in one scene together. How do you just not crack up looking at each other in a room together?
That's a great question for someone like Brian, because The Office, I've listened to the Office Ladies podcast and stuff like that. And they go through scenes where like John Krasinski and Rainn Wilson and the Hall of Famer Steve Carell are just cracking jokes, and like Brian's back there in accounting with Angela Kinsley and Oscar. Yeah. And they're just like sitting there trying not to crack up, looking at each other through the little glass. So like you get all those people together, and it takes talent for them to just not laugh when they're doing this silly little bit.
You know, it's usually on my sets, I'm the one that breaks. Like I'm the one that laughs, and then AD will say again, Mr. Rouleau, Chris, don't laugh. We're still rolling.
So do you have to consider blocking in a shot? Like if you've got a line that is going to be so funny, like do you have to work that in sometimes? I mean,
yeah, I mean, just working the fact that we're going to have people break, or
we're having a tough time getting through this scene. You're obviously not going to hold it together. We're going to have you turn your back at some point, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, and whatever we can do. Natural. You're going to leave the room now.
Sometimes it's just maddening when actors just can't get through the scene. It's like, come on, man, it's not even funny anymore. Stop laughing.
What is the
the joke is done? Yeah.
Like I don't write comedy. I have decided that my comedy is probably not going to be good for the big screen, and it's just hard to write comedy. Jerry is a much more avid comedy fan and filmmaker than I myself am. I love comedy movies. I just can't make them.
Yeah.
But like when I work with actors, I always try to say something like, it was written this way, whether I wrote it or not. But like you're the actor, you channel the character. I would assume there's more of that in an actor that is doing a comedy role but I don't know. What do you say?
I would say it could go either way. There's a lot of precision to comedy.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example from Electric Jesus. Okay, so Mr. Judd Nelson, he's this preacher, and he's preaching a sermon against rock music at a Baptist or an Assemblies of God church in the 80s. So we have these lyrics, to very obscene lyrics to a not Christian heavy metal song. It's that moment when the pastor gets up. Can you believe that people are saying, and he
reads it?
Yeah. Highway to Hell or whatever. Yeah. So, and we couldn't get the Motley Crue lyrics we wanted. For some reason, they wouldn't let us use them. I don't know why. So we used one of we used lyrics that I wrote for that Daniel. There's a song in the movie that you barely hear, but it's a heavy metal song. Mm-hmm. So that's where those lyrics come from. There's a band. There's people on the radio, and they say lyrics like this, and they're just suggestive enough and obscene enough that would make you blush if you were in church.
And you have to fill in the gaps because you're in church.
Yeah, and you're also like, was that really necessary, Pastor Wimber? You didn't have to. You could have just said there's bad stuff, but you had to read it dramatically. Well, Judd just thought he had funnier lines. So he just started making up lyrics. And I remember I was sitting in the back of this church where we were filming, or Daniel Smith, my music my composer, and my wife Emily were just watching, and Judd just kept on like making and getting really obscene. Like we're trying to make a PG-13 movie,
right?
You can't say that. So he'd do a take, and I went up and said, "Hey, let's do that one for me, one for you thing. Can I get one clean with just the words?" And he goes, "I think these words are funnier," and I'm like, Judd Nelson, they're not. My words are funnier than yours. No, mine are funnier than yours. I'm like, well, give me something. So we kept going back and forth. Meanwhile, Emily and Daniel are just laughing at me. I turn around, and they're like,
because they see the comedy in your frustrations.
And we got some mix of Judd words and my words. We didn't get R-rated stuff he was saying.
We'll text you after the showing tomorrow and try to figure out which ones are yours and which
You'll
ones
know
are
the
Judd's.
scene, but the outtakes would just be, I should probably dig them up because they would be hilarious.
I've heard Tarantino talk about, look, you're being paid to read the words that I wrote. So you read the words that I wrote, and there's a blend of creative freedom, I'm sure.
Well, I don't think of Judd as a comedian. I mean, he's a very funny and he's just a great actor.
Right.
Brian's a great actor. He's also like one of the funniest people I've ever met. Fred Armisen is just hilarious.
Put a burn on it.
I mean,
he's so funny.
So like, there were even scenes in Come and Save Me, the music video, where I would just be talking to a friend and just be like, let's make this funnier. And he goes, okay, what do you want to do? And it's like, maybe you could do this. And Andy Marie Tillman, who's also in the movie with Fred, who's also hilarious. Me and Fred were sitting there like working out business and just having a ball, just like, how can we really make this the most of the scene?
Yeah.
When she comes to the door with the food to deliver to Fred, what funny things. And I remember we came up with this idea on the fly. I guess it was mine, but Fred made it work, where I just said, oh, she delivers food. It's all awkward. She leaves. Then you come out and you just start practicing delivering food. You pretend you're her because you're so socially awkward. And you kind of even go out to the point of just knocking on your own door to deliver your own food. And he's like, I love it. This is so absurd and strange. And so we did it. And I mean, we were just rolling.
That's funny.
And that did make the film. But it's just continue to push. And
having a little bit of time built in to, to have that.
Explore those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, First AD, for giving us time.
Well, awesome. I tell you, it's been great talking with you. Anything else that you guys want to share, hit on while we're... I know I'm excited tomorrow. So you've got the Fred Armisen. He's got the music video, right?
Yeah, it's a song by Daniel Smith's band, Danielson, Come and Save Me. And that'll open the block. And then I'll introduce Electric Jesus. We'll show Electric Jesus. And the super cool thing is 2 of the stars of Electric Jesus,
Brian Bogbarner and Jude Law.
No, he's making chili.
I knew they were coming. I knew it.
Shannon Hutchinson, who plays Sarah, and Wyatt Lenhart, who plays Michael, the singer. They're going to come out and sing songs from the movie.
Super cool.
I'm excited about the performance.
It's going to be incredible, and even local to West Virginia, Brendan Gallagher of last year's Model, that band. He's going to play bass for them. So, and Daniel Smith's son is going to play drums.
Cool. Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be, and Ellen Smith, Daniel's wife, is going to sing. I mean, it's going to be incredible.
It's going to be a great way to end the festival.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to leave everybody on a high note and and let everybody kind of give them something to wait for next year. Cause I'm excited for it. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
And thank you to the Hilton Garden Inn in Clarksburg, West Virginia for sponsoring this episode and
providing us with space,
being very accommodating during the entire festival. Chris, thank you so much for coming, and
absolutely,
we look forward to seeing your next film and then seeing Electric Jesus tomorrow.
Yeah,
awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.